What's going on, everybody? Thanks for checking out the Among the Ashes podcast this week. We're your hosts, Wes, Chris, and Marcus. Before we jump into tonight's episode, we want to take just a minute and say thank you to each and every one of you guys that's been following along with us so far. It really does mean the world to us. We really do appreciate it. If you're checking us out on YouTube, if you don't mind, go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment. We do want to hear from you guys and get some feedback on the show. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you can stay up to date on new episodes. When you're done there, if you don't mind, jump over to one of these platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or YouTube Music, and give us a follow there. This helps the show to grow as well. That's true podcast platform. You don't get the video, but you do get the audio, and you can download an episode from whenever you don't have a chance to just sit and watch it on YouTube. Also, if you don't mind, share the show with your friends and help us to get out there to the masses, and tune in every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time with the occasional bonus episodes on Tuesdays, also at 9 a.m. Central Time. Lastly, if you would like to be a part of the show or you have a show idea, shoot us an email at amongtheashes@yahoo.com, or you can jump over to our DMs on Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram, all searchable by Among the Ashes Podcast. So now that all that's been said, let's get into tonight's episode. On tonight's episode, we're hanging out with our new friend Adam Farris. He's the author and writer of the graphic novel Five Stones. It's a gritty take on David and Goliath. Think 300 meets Sin City, that comic book style writing along with that comic book style artwork. Man, it's really awesome. I really enjoyed this episode. Also, if you love this story as well as giants, the Nephilim, the Bible, then I think you're going to love this episode as well. Adam, to me, is a biblical genius. He wrote these novels based strictly upon scripture. That's it. No outside sources. We had so much fun taking a look at the stories that we all knew from Sunday school, doing a deep dive into the Bible, dissecting the dialect, the times, and piecing the puzzle together on a level that I think we all need to get to when we study scripture. So with that being said, you guys go grab you a drink, grab you a snack, sit back and relax, and get ready for this awesome journey through the Bible from the mind of Adam Farris. This is Five Stones, David, Goliath, and the Nephilim. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for checking out the Among the Ashes podcast this week. We are your hosts, Wes and Marcus. Chris is not with us yet again. He was with us. I can't. He showed up. He showed up. He did. Carson's got a ball game. I hate that he keeps having to not be here when we're recording, but hey, man, it is part of it. So we do what we do. How's your week been?
Good, man. A lot of stuff going on, but the Lord's going to take care of it.
Yeah.
That's about all I'm going to say on it.
It's frustrating. I know for sure you feel like this.
Absolutely.
Might as well use the toys. We got them, right? All right. Enough of that. I'm still geeking on the new toy here, man. It's fun. I enjoy it. Trying to learn it and get this new board figured out, and hopefully it sounds good to everybody. So
I think it's a tool that helps us out a lot.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tool. Hopefully it'll make the show grow and make everything better. If we could just figure out the software and get everything going. I hate to rely on Chris all the time and put him under the gun like that, you know. But he figures it out.
That's what we're paying for.
So we're paying the big bucks for sure. Well, Chloe's graduating, and so is Kirsten. You will officially have
one more to go
out of high school.
Oh yeah. Get her through college without spending a fortune.
Good luck on that.
Oh, it was crazy. As I used to pester, she's a cheerleader and all. And it's like, Chloe, you need to put in some athletic scholarships for Alabama so we can go to the game. Right. I can get student tickets and blah, blah, blah. Well, she never would do that. And then I took her to the game. Like, she's been to Alabama with cheer camp and stuff like that. So she knows Alabama. But like the game day atmosphere, when I took her down there, she was like, Dad, I want to go to Alabama. I was like, Chloe, I've been trying to tell you. I can't spend $30,000 a year to see you now. That's what I've been trying to tell you, to get some.
At least put in for it. I mean, I know Kirsten.
She got accepted, but I don't know.
Yeah.
She's going to go to Wallace, and she wants to transfer.
Yeah, it's a smart decision if you don't get stuck. Yeah. That's what Keegan did. He's now at UAH, and Kirsten, I think, is going to UAB. She actually ended up with about $50,000 in scholarships over 4 years, I think. She ended up with more than that over multiple schools, but she settled on UAB, and it's like, well, it's right here at home.
Yeah, so she got another $2,000 from alumni last night for scholarships.
That's awesome. Good. Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm gonna give a shout out right here because it impressed the crap out of me at the alumni banquet last night. Corner High School gave $80,000 in scholarship money. $80,000. I was like, good grief.
And that's coming from people that went to Corner out of their own pockets. That's awesome.
$80,000. I was blown away.
Yeah, way to go, Corner alone. Those kids deserve it. They've worked hard for sure. They've been dealt a raw hand since COVID.
Sure.
It's different. It's definitely different.
That's good. Because it speaks to the community,
right?
How much they put back into their kids,
right? Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess we can actually get into tonight's topic. What do you know about the Nephilim?
Well, giants.
Yeah.
There were what? Half breeds from angels and humans.
And you know where I stand when it comes to cryptids. Like, if it's cryptid, I'm all in, right? I love it. Bigfoot, aliens, Dogman, anything like that. Like, I'm down with
Bigfoot.
But my take on those creatures always goes back to something spiritual, right? Like, I think just to kind of paint a broad stroke of where I'm at. I don't know why I went down this road. I mean, I've always been interested in aliens, even from a kid, but why I even went down this road a few years ago, I don't know. But maybe it's for this moment right here. Because and talking to our guest the other night, like, I did not want to get off the phone. And this dude, like, man, I'm telling you, I wish I was this smart. Things that I thought, and then he took and expounded on it. And then things that was like, oh crap, I've never thought of it like that. But my take on these creatures are that they are something spiritual. The veil is thinning, and maybe they're crossing over in and out. But he brought up a good point about angelic beings, and I'm gonna let him get into it and describe everything that he said. But like
Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily Bigfoot, but that they come from Nephilim bloodline. That's my take on it. You know what I mean? Or maybe it's a demonic being that's possessing an animal and they're growing. I know that's far-fetched and stretched, and it's really weird in the Christian community to talk about things like that, right? Well, I think that's just a demon in general, but that and the Wendigo. But either way, I also think there's a lot of Hollywood right now, pop culture. It's a big thing as well. But I do think that there's a reason for this. And I think it's something that we should pay attention to. And I think it's something that we glass over in the Bible. Sure. There was a reason why God did away with the earth, why he flooded the earth. It wasn't just because of people being wicked. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's because of the Nephilim infiltration, angels falling from heaven, looking upon the women of earth. And and in my opinion, I will let our guests get further into that, but I look at dinosaurs that way. I look at giant redwood trees that way. I don't think that they only infiltrated human beings. I think they were trying to infiltrate the earth as a whole, and that's why God did away with it, and we think it stops right there. But if you read on, it says, and there were giants in the days after Noah as well. And that's when you get to Joshua and people like that going and saying that the men made them look like grasshoppers. Mm-hmm. Now, some scholars will tell you it's because they were men of royalty, right? And they had great wealth, and they're saying, hey, we're beneath them because these men are wealthy and they're great fighters and whatever. But I don't think so. I think that these were giant men, and it really intrigues me. And the thing is it's so funny that both sides, Christianity and the secular world, can get on board with giants.
Yeah.
Aliens, but they can't get on board with where it came from and why it came from. Whenever you approach a Christian with this topic, if it's not in the Bible, well, it is in the Bible. You just got to freaking look. And man, I'm telling you, this guy brings it out. Like, he's showing you where to look. It's scripture that you have read 1,000 times, but when you hear him break it down, it's like, holy crap, that makes sense. The men of renown and anyway, we'll get into it, but it's very intriguing. We hope everybody enjoys it on both sides of the camp, Christian and non. I'm prepared for the hate emails. That's fine. This is one man's take on it. And I stand in agreement with everything he said. It lined up with things I've prayed about and things I've read. And he's not just on this journey because he wants to be on it. That's the crazy thing about it. Like he talks about how he knows God has put him here and the revelation of Scripture. Anyway. I'm spoiling it for everybody. So, without further ado, we're going to bring on Adam Farris. He is a graphic writer, graphic novel, almost comic book type things, but it's taken the stories of the Bible and the truths of the Bible and putting it in a form that's fun to read. So yeah, Adam, you with us, man?
Yes, sir. How you guys doing?
Man, we're doing great, doing great. I am so sorry that we have pushed this an hour in our foolishness and our angst that we get caught up in. I was at a friend's house for a birthday party, and his mother is pretty in tune with the Lord, and I'm getting ready to leave, and she stops me and is like, "Hey, can I share something with you?" So for the next 45 minutes, Marcus was picking me up, and she's giving me a word from the Lord. So that's kind of where we're at. But it lined up with my spirit, and I'm going to pray about it, and we're going to move forward. So, but enough about us, man. Tell us about yourself, bro.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that was a heavy introduction, man. Set the bar pretty high.
Dude, I'm impressed, man. Like I am ready.
Jeez Louise. All right. So yeah, I'm Adam Farris. I'm a writer and biblical researcher. 3 years ago, I got put on this journey. I was just a distribution center manager, just a guy, career guy, with kids and doing the thing. And I was getting really stressed out at work, and I was getting really burnt out. And that's the point of this whole thing is that's when, that's when you're ready to be talked to and to be led, is when you're out of your head. God says it. It's even in my book. He says that, my power works best with your weakness. My strength works best with your weakness.
Sure.
And it does. So, I'm going through my stuff at that point. And then my father passed unexpectedly in September of 2022. Right when, I was getting burnt out at my worst. So couple of months, really, really hard on the family. I was there for it. I was there. I had to, you imagine just walking in and you got to start picking out, what you're going to do, the arrangements, box and, cremation, whatever, right? Heavy decisions. So, man, it was really hard. But I felt, I'm the youngest, and I felt, it was kind of like, this is your time, shine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I put myself to the complete back. I didn't think about nothing, and I don't think I've ever forced more smiles in my life, because I was trying to, like, every time I would talk to my mom, she would, hey, it's all good, it's all, just doing a thing. So those months, man, were heck on me. I start really feeling an urge to write, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know what to do with it. And eventually I just started really dissecting David and Goliath. Again, I couldn't understand it. I just constantly was thinking about it. And I was at my bottom, I guess you could say. Like I just kind of tapped out. And I have church background. I was born and raised Pentecostal, left at 17. So I can kind of, you feel things, where they're coming from. So
we're Pentecostal, so we get it. We get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. So I just literally was like, all right, I feel like you're telling me to do something. And, I don't know what it is. I feel like you tell me to write. I keep thinking about David and Goliath. I'm not a dummy. I feel like those two things are together. So, the position I was in was, I got to look out for my family, right? I'm a working man, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't know, I had no direction. So I was just like, if you can help me through this and help my family, make sure my family's straight, you got me. 1,000%, whatever it is, help me. You know what I mean? Yeah, because talking to God is easier than what we think it is. You know what I mean? Like you obviously want to be respectful and all that stuff, but just talk. So
yeah,
I
think, not to interrupt, but harder. Yeah, I think we need to talk to God like we would talk to each other. You know what I'm saying? Like he knows, he already knows. So what are we hiding from him?
and he wants that relationship and that trust. I heard something today at church, and it was super profound, and it has a lot to do with the Book of Faith, 5 stones, which is faith and all that. But faith is not believing in the process and the result. Faith is believing in the Creator that will bring the result.
That's good.
And I'm like, yo,
Mhm.
because this is a 3-year journey, and every day's new for me. You know, I'm a normal human being. I doubt, and I doubt, and I doubt, and I doubt, and I doubt. And thankfully, he hears us and he gives us little signs, along the way. And that's what listening is about, because I needed to hear that thing about faith. Specifically today, I needed to hear that. So, if I'm not in tune with the listening, which is super important, I can't stress that enough, I would have missed that. Yeah, that's a cool saying, but I needed that right now. Because man, I'm pushing hard on this journey that, that I've never, I had, 3 years ago, I had never written or painted nothing, like, at all. You know what I'm saying? So the process, while I was doing it, I had to Google what a script looked like, and, and how to do that. So anyway, so yeah, I tap out, I give in, start Googling, trying to figure out, well, let me backtrack. So I first thought about what I could do. And and this is kind of what we were talking about a little while ago, was what's my voice? And the story of Exodus and Moses, when I started really researching, was super resounding, because it was like, what's my voice? What can I do? I wanted initially to do like some animation or like live stuff. But that's tens of thousands of dollars and people, and so what can I do?
I'm gonna tell you, bro, if you release these books, the animation is gonna come to it. I mean, it is. I mean, that's the way. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. It's
I appreciate it, because that's my end goal, is to get better visuals, better stories. Because think about the movie 300, and not the movie, but the cinematography, like the colors and stuff. Imagine that, but the King's Highway story of when they took out King Og and King Simon. Like, come on.
Yes.
So
Anyway, dude, I'm so fired up right now. You just don't know. I'm so fired
up. So that's when the comic books came, because I'm a comic book guy, and that's when that came up. Was that's a great way into this thing. So I just wrote and just wrote and just wrote. And I didn't even like really share it with my family at that point, because I was just trying to figure out what this even looked like, what this sounded like. I eventually did bring it up to my wife. I can't say enough about her. Something too that goes back to listening. God doesn't just work with you, right? I mean, unless you're a single person, but like if you're in a relationship, married or whatever the case, it's a two-way street. And that's what's so awesome about God and how he works, is like, he's super meticulous. Like, he's an architect and he's an engineer, and he thinks about things that we couldn't even possibly think about. I've been reading about descriptions of the earth and planets and zodiacs and stuff. And if we get to that, we'll get to that. But I feel like it's just more like he built this machine. You think about an engine, valves, valve train, all this stuff, like that's Earth and moons and planets and stars and stuff. So it all works together. Anyways, I'm getting a little crazy here. So I get the script, bring it to my wife. She's down. And he put me in a position to be able to self-finance it. He led me in the direction of this really good job, and, blah. So that was 100% my focus. I get this book. I reach out to an artist. Artist was cool. We got it done. It's black and white. And I wanted to do like a Sin City. You can tell I like grit's my thing. Like, I super dig Joshua and Caleb, because like, you got to be tough, and there's people that, there's the Moseses, there's the Aarons, you know what I mean? But, you need some grit. So,
I think along with that, though, I think the days of Jesus being hung on a cross and just him hanging there on a cross is not enough of a representation anymore.
Yeah.
You take the Passion of the Christ.
What all he went through before then.
Yeah. I mean, everything that even Mel Gibson did to show us the horror of the cross it pales in comparison, right? But then you've got, The Chosen coming out, and it's kind of gritty. And then we've talked about it here on the show, The House of David on Prime. Have you watched it?
I've watched a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I hate to just go on a rant, so I'll minimize it. But I don't like what Hollywood does. I like to the script. I don't want to add anything and change anything.
And I get that. I get that, but I guess my point is a nod to you in the direction you're going. Like, I think that is a great direction of making it gritty, because that's what it was, right? It's life. It's not, it's not, well, hey, Jesus, hey, Peter, how are you? You know what I mean? Like, they were human beings, and they went through real things just like we do. Probably a heck of a lot worse, being just the fact that we're so modern now. You know what I mean? Their lives were way grittier than ours are. So I think it's a beautiful representation,
Well, yeah, like I was thinking about it the other day. Again, I'm not perfect. So you know what I mean? I go through my peaks and valleys. And it was like, what is my voice in this niche? And like, what am I really doing here? But like, something went through my head. The story of our faith is God, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus. You get right down to it. You know what I mean? So why is the book so big? And why there's so many chapters, and why there's so many stories? And that was, I feel like, if I could be bold, was God reminded me, like, there's more to the story that needs to be told. And not to take away from, the most important part, which is, salvation. But he chose the authors and the stories on purpose.
Yeah. Right.
And the more I research, like Ezra talks about more Nephilim, Nehemiah talks about more Nephilim, Esther talks about more Nephilim. So it's just this over-encompassing story that I didn't know about. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what was a really fun part for me. But so anyway, so I do this black and white thing, and it's just missing the punch that I really wanted. So of course I started thinking about, I can get a colorist, and I can get another person in this. And I only wanted people to work on this because they wanted to, not for money, because it brings a different vibe. So it went through my head, will you paint it? And at this point, this was 2.5 years ago. So I would get stuff through my head. Obviously, I learned that was God talking to me, telling me, nudging me, go this direction. So I told my wife, and she'd been super supportive every step of the way. Every craziness that I would be like, hey, she was down, because she understood. And obviously, God was working on her heart too. But this one, she's like, okay, well, if you feel like you should do that. And so I'm laying in bed.
Sure,
and I'm like,
honey, yeah, okay.
Oh,
sure.
Right up. So I'm laying in bed that night, and I'm like, what are you doing, Adam? You writing a comic book and you're going to paint it? That's real cool. What are you doing? And I'm just like, gosh. So and it was super on my heart. So I knew I wasn't wrong. You know what I'm saying? So I just, I was like, I just closed my eyes. I was like, can you please make a sound or something? Just let me know I'm in the right direction. That's all I need. And, oh man, it was, for reference, I say a trumpet, because that's the sound that it sounded like, but it was this deep tone, and it was, just blaring sound, and it shook me to my core. I'm laying in bed, and I just ball up. All I could say was 10-4, yes, sir. And I mean, and I'm telling you, yeah, I'm a super honest dude. In the Bible, everyone says the same thing when they see an angel or they see God. Say the same thing. Oh, I drop to my knees, I drop. That wasn't just them, out of respect. I can tell you this confidently. That was a involuntary motion. Because, as much as you're familiar with the Exodus story and Moses, talking to God and seeing to God, remember his face shining, and this is the creator. You know what I'm saying? So like that sound shook me to my core, and through the 3 years, every single time that I've gotten ready to hang it up and say, well, you gave it your best. Good job, Adam. I think about that sound and I'm like, no, nope, keep going. We're all humans, man. You know what I mean? I think it's important to be honest about, how you feel about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I told my wife the next day, I'm like, hey, I'm painting this thing, man. And I told her about it. About the sound, because that was soon report for her to see all this stuff too. So practice painting. I got my kids to just draw on watercolor paper, because I wanted it to be, again, gritty and have a different feel. I didn't want this thing to look like anything else that's ever been put out, whether people like it or they don't like it. It had to be different. It had to tell a different story. So I learned how to watercolor paint, with my kids' help, and eventually got this thing put together and just been hammering on it hard. Um, getting it out while I was doing this. So to explain a little bit with the distribution center manager part, man, the more and more I do this, I like to just put the biblical lens on and look at everything through that. 13 years, 14 years, I loved root cause analysis. I love, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that world, but all warehousing have a warehouse management system, WMS system. I want to learn that system inside and out, the computer system. My drive, why I did what I did for so long, was because I love figuring things out. I love, like, if you order a tire and it doesn't show up, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find where it went, or if it's the wrong tire, blah. I do believe that was training for me, on how to research the Bible, because as I'm writing this, as I'm doing this whole thing with the book, I'm just reading, and I want to. This is a religious thing, so I'm learning God, and I'm getting closer with Him, and all that stuff. But I still have this thirst for knowledge, and that was my issue. I'm sure all of our issues, in church at one point or another, was like, this doesn't feel like the whole story, you know doesn't things don't match. Like, if you're telling me that Egypt's bad, and there's then why is the pyramid on our dollar? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's more here, but so I'm just literally just reading, and just, like, what the way I research things is you try to find the rhythm or the pattern of whatever it is. So in the Bible specifically, there's genealogy. There's certain ways that things are phrased. Adam, son of Bill, blah blah blah. So I'm just going through there, and I would see these. I call them spikes, like anomalies. Like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would you word it like that? So that's when I started my blog, because I know my main focus is the books and the visual image, and again, eventually, knock on wood on everything, films and animation. But I didn't want to not talk about these things that I'm finding, because it's just starting to look like a different picture. Like, everyone's familiar with, the one stone in Goliath. It's 5 stones, and it's 5 stones because uh, Goliath's 3 sons and brother were there during the battle.
Right.
And that comes up later in 2 Samuel 21. It's not 21, 2 Samuel. So it's like, okay, all right off the bat, the story has not been told right. At least to me. And I'm not saying I'm anybody, but so I just start this blog, and then eventually I noticed a pattern in my blog where I'm talking about, a bunch of Nephilim, a bunch of hybrids, but a pattern was starting with David's mighty men. Because I had made a mental note, like, that sounds cool. I want to research that. But then I start looking back over, like, it was almost a year and a half at that point. I'm like, man, I've already started researching a bunch of these guys. So I'm like, so then I just completely just dove in, and it clicked why I was doing David and Goliath. Because, like, why that? It's a story that's already been told a million times. Because it's a bigger story, and it's a broader story, and there's way more people involved, and it's a good segue into all of it. Because the entire journey, literally, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, and Chronicles, is about giants, hybrids, and David's battle. And that's, don't take into account that's right after the Promised Land conquest, which is all about that too. So, you know what I'm saying? So like all this stuff is just click. I'm like, all right, okay. I'm kind of figuring out what you want me to do with this. So that's been my focus for these 3 years is answer the questions that I had and then just try to help. I'm a vessel. I'm being used. It is incredible. And I want to tell you, everybody that's listening, you will never be your happiest compared to when you're doing what you're called to do.
Yeah,
When you
I
give
agree.
in, when you give in and you just God's will, ask Job. It's a little scary, but that's what faith is. Remember, that's why that thing was so important to me earlier, was because it's like, David didn't grab he didn't grab 5 stones because he thought he would miss, right? That's not faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I even learned, like I said, that thing I heard today, I knew why he grabbed the 5 stones, because there were giants there. But it's a bigger picture now. Again, see, like I'm saying, I'm learning every day. He grabbed them stones because he absolutely believed in God, 1,000%. And he was giving in. And he was like, no. Because, God, we know the story. God came to him, 14 years old. He killed a bear and a lion by hand. He was, not super loved by like his brothers and his dad. He wasn't in stature comparable to all those guys. So it was this dude that, like, the one person was God. You know what I'm saying? So he absolutely believed in him and was like, nope, taking care of business. And in 5 stones, I guess I'll, however you guys want to do this, but like I'll break down 5 stones. That was one, because I took some liberties. I wanted to emphasize points. And that was
don't break it down yet, because I've got some comments. Just finish your thought, but then we'll get into 5 stones because we've got some comments too.
Perfect. So I didn't do the Saul's armor part because I wanted to emphasize David walked up, saw it, and took care of him. You know what I mean? More of like action. I'm not taking away from the story, but again, this needed to hit a point. But yeah, hit me up, man. What you got?
No, I totally agree. So it's funny. I think I shared with you the other day, I went through some things spiritually, and the last 13 and a half years, I've just kind of wandered the desert. One thing that I didn't put in correlation, and I'll bring this up in a second, but when I got back on track, so to speak, at the same time, God was leading Marcus to do some men's ministry stuff. Now, God had laid me doing a podcast on my heart like 5-6 years ago. I'm whining and pissing and complaining. God, why don't you use me anymore?
That was speaking to me the whole time what you were fixing to say.
The Lord said, well, you've got a phone. Why do you need a pulpit? You're not taking advantage of what I give you. You don't do it at work. You don't share me anywhere, So Marcus calls me and he's like, hey man, I think I'm gonna put on a men's conference. And man, we're back and forth of everything that God had been sharing with me about being a better man, being a better husband, being a better father, because in this 13 years, man, I just withdrew. Like, had God not woke me up in October, we would not be having this conversation today. I was done. I had planned it. My son's birthday was in February. By March, I was checking out. And as much as I hate to even say that, it's a coward's way out. And but it was just, it's where I was, and God told me, sit down at the head of your table and you'll find me. Sit down and read, open your Bible and you'll find me. And I opened it up to the Galatians 5, the fruit of the Spirit, right? Well, from there, I dove off into searching. I asked the question, God, Saul was chosen and sinful because he didn't kill the Amalekite king, right? But David is also chosen and sinful. Why did you choose David over Saul? Like, they're both sinful, And we've had this discussion, and I've been going down this road of looking at David and looking at his life and how and why, you know what I mean? You get into Saul, it talks, and I didn't know he was a head taller than everybody else. And we can get into that in a minute. But the crux of it is he chose David because of David's heart, his obedience. Saul was never obedient to God. He respected God because God did all these things for him, right?
Yeah.
Made him a conqueror, made him a king, but he never obeyed God. And even in his thinking he's doing the right thing by keeping the spoils of the best of everything to give to God, he's not being obedient. And ultimately, that's what it boils down to with me, is getting back to being obedient. I had some things come against me recently, and I just got this new equipment, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm just going to end the pod. I shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? I'm just going to end it. I obviously have not heard from God, and I'm not gonna, I chose a path that I see now the good that's come out of it. Right. And I see now that even in my ignorance, God can use that situation to right the ship. Right. But the thing I learned was, and I told Marcus earlier, in my emotions and the voice of God, because they sound the same when you're trying to do his will and his work. You know, so many times we want to help people and do things for people, and we end up being abused and burned by them because we think we can change them instead of praying and saying, God, you change them. It's about obedience. And it's the same thing with Marcus. He has started this men's ministry, and it's just all hell has broke loose around him since he's done it. And it's been one thing after another to deter us. And then I open up my email. I don't even know when you emailed me, Adam. I don't know how long ago it's been. I didn't look at the date, but I looked at it because I get things all the time from, let's help get your SEO engagement up. And do you need somebody to help sponsor your podcast, as far not sponsor, pay me and I will promote your podcast. It's just scam stuff, and I'm reading this and I'm like, here's another scam. But then I saw the artwork and I was like, holy crap, maybe I should just respond. And I sat on that email for a couple of days and I'm like, should I? So I responded, and then you responded back. But it's been total confirmation for me in areas of my life of being obedient, that obedience is better than sacrifice. And if we are obedient, it may not be, I may not have a syndicated podcast, right? But if it touches that one life, then I've done what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And there's so much fulfillment in that. Like, I get a lot of pleasure and a lot of joy out of a lot of things, but I love doing what I'm doing right here. Like, and I know nothing about it. Like, I'm horrible at it.
It's also that stepping out on faith, like you was talking about earlier. Just got to make that step.
Yeah.
Know that God's already put put it into place. He's already made it. You just be obedient.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm so jazzed about it. Cause I'm like, dude, you should be on like bigger podcasts than this. Like with what you got going on. Like, I mean, all 270 people that support us, they don't listen to us, but yeah, man, like, if nothing else, I think it's an encouraging thing for you too, because here you are seeing two other men who are in the same cuff that you're in. And back to the 13-year thing, that's about how long David hid from Saul, was 13 years. You're struggling for 13 years in your job and whatever it is and then you step into your calling. I've hidden for 13 years. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of confirmation for me in even having this podcast part, or this particular episode, if that makes sense. So,
dude, this all happened, to your point, this all happened when I was in my 40s. Think about that. Think about that number. 40. That's a number of completion.
Yeah.
That's how
for us. I mean, it's same for us. You know what I mean? Like, Marcus has played drums in church for years, but never headed up or been any kind of ministry. Have you ever really felt called?
Not really.
You know what I mean?
And that's crazy too, because since probably I was young, 15, 16, maybe, probably younger than that, I've had people confirm that in my life. Yeah. You know what I mean? God's chosen you to do something.
Yeah.
Never knew what that was. Never thought about stepping into it, or, really even praying, Lord, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Till it happened,
Yeah, I mean,
confirmed it in my spirit.
And he's always been a great support person, what I mean? Back you. And I mean, he's helped me in ministry for years. And so he's watched me. His son is called to preach. And it's like, he's over there going, well, my, which we're cousins, but we're more like brothers. My brother and my son both preaching. What about me, God?
Yeah.
You know?
And that was crazy too, because like once he started being called into ministry, that opened my eyes, and it was really like the Lord saying, "Hey, get in there with him, because he's going to need somebody to support him. No
Yeah.
matter what he does, even if you're in it or not, you've got to be there for him."
Yeah.
So I think that helped bring me along more too,
Sure.
and more sensitive what God was trying to get me into.
Yeah. And then he steps in a role here at the podcast, and it's changed the whole dynamic of what we're doing of hey man, let me interview you, to hey man, come be a part. You know what I mean? And I think he loves it as much as I do. Now, if we could get Chris to love it like we do. Nah, Chris loves the technical stuff. He doesn't like to be on camera much, but it's just crazy. It's like, but as soon as something came up against me, I'm ready to quit, and the Lord's like, are you? Do you not think that I can use the times that maybe you're on path, but you're just off a little bit? Do you not think I can bring you back on that path and use you in the way? And I see that with David, well, do I really need these 5 stones? Well, I'll take them. Could God have killed the giant and turned the giants away without the other 4 stones? Absolutely. You know what I mean? But it was that obedience factor of, I'm going to take them because what if, and hearing that trumpet sound. I don't know if you can hear that on your end, Adam, but.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let me tell you a crazy story when I was a kid, man. So, I was raised Pentecostal, like we said, and I was in the youth group, and I'm a square peg my entire life. I was too good around the bad kids, and I was too bad around the good kids. Yeah, it's just, you eventually get over trying to fit in, and you're not, what I'm saying? So when I was, every time we go to youth group, we go to these different, conferences, whatever the case, somebody would always come up to me just randomly, be like, "Hey, can I pray with you?" And be like, "Yeah, absolutely." And they'd be like, "It's got a plan for you." I'm a kid, man.
Right.
And I have no idea. And I like heavy metal, and you know what I mean, comic books. So it's, I don't know. When I think I was driving. I think I was 15 or 16. Well, I may not have been driving yet. We were at this youth retreat, and I'm testing my waters as a young punk, and I'm just, I really like to get in trouble when I was that age. So me and a buddy were at a table by ourselves. We don't fit in. We're, the bad kids, whatever case. The pastor, and then his, the other guys with him, all came and sat at our table with us. We were just like, "Oh, what do we do? What do we do?" And the pastor's right beside me, and everyone's just having, casual conversations, whatever the case. And, I look over, and the pastor's got this really cool, like Native American turquoise ring, feathers. I was like, "Man, that's a cool ring, man." He's like, "Oh, I appreciate it." Just sitting there. Next thing I know, he takes it off and puts it on the table right in front of me. It was like, "Cheers." Whole place is shut down. We're like, Adam Farris? Like, I could never. It was like, why would he give me, why would the pastor give Adam Farris his ring? I believe, man, that God does these things in your life, to set you up. Like I mentioned, my training and distribution. Like you look at Exodus. What was the point? The main point in Exodus, with the manna and the quail and the 40 years, was because he was building them. They weren't ready. He was building them. What was he doing with the manna? He was teaching them how to fend for themselves and how to go out, how to work, because they
You
were
can
so.
get off my toes right now, bro. You can stop stepping on my, like, this is exactly what Katie was telling me whenever we left. Sorry, man. I didn't interrupt. My mind's blown right now. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's, it, and that's what I was talking about with the stars and the machine and engine earlier, was like, it's just super complex, dude. Like, we have no idea. Job literally is talking about like string theory, and how everything's connected. But that's something, I give a super shout out to Dr. Randall Smith, 1 Hour, One Book. cannot suggest checking that out more. But he talks about that a lot, and how we're human and we'll just like, all right, well, it hadn't happened yet. Well, it hadn't happened yet. Well, it hadn't happened yet. All right, when is it going to happen? When it happened yet? We just don't even look at it is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And you are in the place that you need to be. And that goes back to that faith thing of like, well, it hadn't happened yet. So all right, let me try this. That's where you mess up. We got to really try to listen, because listening with God is seeing. You might be thinking about something, and then you look and you see the label on a bottle, but it was literally what you were just thinking. And it's like, hey, because there's no coincidences in life. I learned that in distribution. Life's black and white. It either happened or it didn't happen. If it did happen, you can find pieces and put it together. If it didn't, there are no pieces. So, yeah, man, that's again, for my 3 years is like perfectly super honest. There's been, I think I said, there's times where I just, it's like, all right, I gave it my best, but I had to really, 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 really focus. And now, it's a comfortable thing to me, but this, I didn't do this for money, and I didn't do this honestly, I didn't do this hoping somebody would like it. I just had to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to focus on for 3 years. Was it doesn't matter, because I'm here. I can't change a heart. It's not my place. You know what I mean? My place was just put this out and talk about it. What happens from there, just like you said with the podcast, it's like, it doesn't matter what we think. And that was Saul's issue. If you look at all of the issues in the Bible, it comes from pride.
Mm-hmm.
The angels, Saul, you know what I mean? It's pride. And I think that it's super resounding that everybody was the youngest. David was the youngest. Isaac, Jacob, you know what I mean? That means something. Even when Isaac was doing his blessing for Jacob, right? He switched his hands. He did that on purpose. You can't, it's not you. You know what I mean? It's not you. It's you're doing it for a reason, and you can't get caught up on yourself. And it's, oh my gosh, we're humans. It's super impossible. But you know what I mean? You gotta just focus on that. Basically.
Yeah, that's one thing in me. I probably have 60, 80 hours plus in my intro and outro for the show. And it may suck. It may suck to everybody else, but when I look at it, that's my baby. And that's the most beautiful baby in the world. You know what I mean? And it's not because of it being good. Like it may not, like, legit, people could tell me it sucked and I would be okay with that, because I know it's what God told me to do. It was birthed and created the way God told, our intro song, everything. It's not, I didn't create that song, but I heard it on another YouTube video 5 or 6 years before that. And matter of fact, whenever I was thinking of, well, what do I want to do for an intro, that's the only song I could think of, and I didn't know where to find it. I couldn't even go back to the video where I found it from, and I just Googled, I think the song's called Fly Away, YouTube, and there it was, and it's like, okay, God, I'll use that. The pink coloring, we're 80s and 90s kids, but I wanted that 80s and 90s feel. I don't know why, but that's where we settled. And that's, why pink? I don't know, because I'm not a pink guy, you know what I mean? But like, I know it's what God has told me to do. This is the way I want it to look. And this is, use that, even down to the font. I'm scrolling through looking for a font similar to what we used in youth group, right? Yeah. And our youth, originally the colors for the show were going to be black, green, and white, because that's what our youth group was. And I really liked it. And the Lord was like, no, but you can use a similar font. So I started and just landed on the font that we use, and it's almost identical. I mean, it's funny to me that if we will get out of the way long enough, you know what I mean, and just listen, He'll speak to us. And again, it's separating, is that me and my emotion, or is it God? And it's so close. It's so similar, but it is that trumpet sound. Okay, this is it. This is where I need to turn. I mean, no, it's not like that. It's more like this. Okay, I'm done with the buttons, y'all. But it is a resounding thing whenever you're tuned in and you're hearing God correctly. And that's when you see things like in the background behind you, just beautiful artwork that you couldn't have produced without Him. And I would love to have these. If you could see my studio, man, we've got artwork hanging all over it. Like, I would love to have these pieces in my studio, because that's exactly the vision that I have for things here, and it's just amazing to me to hear how God is doing that within not only mine and his life at the same time, but some random dude, sends me an email, which I know it come through Drewski, which I just randomly reached out to one day. Hey man, would you like to come on the show? And him and I have talked some, but not a ton. I consider him a friend. I'd go have lunch with him. He could come stay at my house, but I don't really know anything about him. You know what I mean? But it's just funny how God orchestrates things when we listen and pay attention. I could have, like I said, I don't know how long that email sat in my inbox, but I know I looked at it for 2 or 3 days going, is this a scam? No, surely somebody like this, this guy's, he's pretty legit. He doesn't need to come on our show. That's the thoughts I had, you know what I mean? Like, what's our show going to benefit him? But it's like, well, what will you benefit from him coming on your show? And it's definitely inspiring for me to know that I'm tracking with what God's telling me or telling us.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I don't mean to keep making it about us. It just keeps blowing just like the other night on the phone, my mind just keeps getting blown by this whole situation. So
it's good. It's wild, dude. Like I said, 3 years, this has just been developing. And I've just, like I said, I've tried to focus on listening, because that's the important part, is to get out of our heads and to get out of my own way and just do what I had to do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
So jump into how many novels have you written so far?
So I have a bunch of scripts written. I've only actually self-published one, which is 5 Stones. Working on Great Fish now. We're about halfway through. It is self-published, self-financed, so you know what I mean. It's going to take me a little bit of time, but
before you say that, where can we find the book?
5stones.bigcartel.com.
Okay,
it's the commerce page. I've got YouTube and all that stuff. I think I sent you all those.
We'll link all that in the show notes for everybody too. But
yeah. I've got a lot of really good scripts, and that's, I guess, how we'll jump into Nephilim. Yeah. But I've got a really cool one with Daniel, the chapter 3 and 4, when Nebuchadnezzar turns into the man beast. Because I've, like I mentioned when I was started my blog, I'm sitting there trying to figure out, again, what's my voice and what can I offer to this, that hasn't already been done, and everybody's already beaten the Gen 6 drum. What's my place to come in and do the same thing? And that's when I started noticing all this other stuff. You know what I mean? And I just kept. I was like, all right, well, I guess maybe that's my point here, is to talk about what we don't talk about and dive into what we don't focus on.
Well, and so that's why I think that's a good thing, because I think these people that are beating the Genesis 6 creation story drum are the people who don't want to go deeper. It's just enough God to say that I'm religious, but I can also twist it to make it look like it's not about God too,
See, that's getting really irritating to me, just to be an honest person. My work, I focus on just the Bible. I don't take any other books, and we even talked about that before. Dr. Raina Smith talks about this a lot, that other books can manipulate the truth, manipulate the way you see the truth too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because this is spiritual warfare,
right?
There are no rules in spiritual warfare. So yes, there are books written that, yes, there's some spirituality. I don't know what words to use, but when you read it, things happen. Like, there's stuff that we don't know, man.
Right.
So again, you got to be careful with that.
It's like we were talking the other night, the Book of Enoch. Like, I think it could be a great history resource tool. I know they refer to it several times in the Bible, but I also feel like it checks my spirit, almost deception, just because of the praise to the watchers, and people that, like, I walked in and I saw the Book of Enoch on my mom's table, and I was like, "You reading that?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, no, stop. Let's talk about this. I'm not saying you shouldn't read it, and I'm not saying that there aren't truths in it, but I don't feel like it's all pointing to God. At the point that you're praising the watchers instead of praising God, I take issue with that. Now, that maybe that's just me. Maybe that's not the way it really is, but everything in the Bible points back to God. 100%. Everything points back to it. These other canonized or uncanonized texts, they do point to a lot of other things and then God. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's my issue that I take with it. Not saying it can't be used and shouldn't be used. Because again, I do know, I think it's in Jude, they reference the book of Enoch. I think Matthew does. But I think there's a reason why it's not in there. Even, I mean, I know, well, they just left it. No, God left it out years ago, like hundreds of years ago for a reason, in my opinion. But sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Oh no, you good, brother. So there has to be one truth, right? And that's everything. That's not just this conversation right now. There has to be a truth. You know what I mean? Why is the sky blue? You know, why is this? Why is that? It has to be a truth. Even in real estate, you can't choose a rock for your boundaries because the rock can move. Like there has to be a standard that does not change. And that's what I'm learning is what my focus on is to figure out this one standard. Because you go through all these different books, they may go super parallel, but then, well, it wasn't this guy, it was really this guy that did it. And honestly, man, if it differs from the actual Bible story, we really need to question, you know, how much we're putting on that.
I agree.
Because I mean, it says in Revelation, there's a curse on anybody that changes this story.
Right.
So, you know, do what you got to do. I ain't changing nothing. You know what I'm saying? And that's when, you know, the Bible story itself is super deep. So we haven't even scratched the surface on that. Why are we delving into these other books and putting all this focus on other books?
Right.
I think scriptural evidence is clear that like the incursion debate, I think it's clear as day there. Gen 6 it started and it never stopped. It's just been in 2025 it's still an issue, right? Because what were the two things tripping everybody up the entire time? Child sacrifice and sexual debauchery. Well, we kind of still have some issues with that now in 2025 because it's one party behind that. You know what I mean? That's the black and white thing from distribution is things don't just happen. Things are on purpose. That's why this is a constant thing. You know, look at child sacrifice. Why? Because from day one, heel and skull, right? So it's like Herod. All these people have been after children, you know, because they wanted they wanted Jesus. So that's just been a constant thing. So, and that's clear pattern, at least in my opinion, it's clear patterns on, you know, what's really behind the scenes. But anyway, so yeah, you got to be careful looking at other books. So let's dive into 5 stones. Let's get crazy with that. I wanted to really touch base on a lot of different things with the story, and it's a 2-book story, 1st and 2nd Samuel. I couldn't do a big monster book my first time around, so I wanted to touch base on a few very specifics. The Amalekites, I knew I needed to tackle that. That's a big thing here. Them being the lickers of blood and cannibals, that needed to be a visual image. You hear that a lot too. That's you know, there's certain argue points in the Bible that people try to use against you, God. You know what I mean? Amalekites is one of them. Like, oh, he's calling for these people to die. Oh, you know, blah. Well, who are those people? What are they? What did they do? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's not our place to say should somebody die or not. But if it's a hybrid human cannibal killing people, well, then they probably shouldn't be here.
And I agree with that statement. It's not our place to say, but I'll be honest with you, there are some people. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, let's look at Jeffrey Dahmer. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can get political all we want to, but had he not been put in prison, he would have continued to do what he did, you know, and some people are they're of reprobate mind. There's no coming back for them, you know, and so and I agree with you. Like, I have never took issue with God wiping out the Amalekites because of what they did, you know, and it does blow my mind to hear people say, well, he's just a mean God. He women, children, but no, they were all that way. They had a choice not to be. They chose it.
He made chocolate and he gave us taste buds.
Yeah.
That sums it up right there.
Yep.
God loves us, and that's that. So that's that. On the back of 5 stones is 1 John 15:12. I did that on purpose. That's Jesus saying, my commandment is to love each other as I have loved you. That sums it up right there, brother.
Yeah.
And I put that on the back of 5 stones. It's a black satin cover with white lettering. Because that's the point here, man, is all of these bad guys, all these Nephilim, anybody that died, come on, help me out. So yeah, it had to be focused on, it had to be in color, it had to be visual. So I had them right off the bat. And that has everything to do. I mean, that even King Agag. So it's crazy. I think, and I'm still doing some research on this, but I think the answer to Nephilim is in the kings, the non-Israelite kings in the Bible. And I think that absolutely goes all the way up until 2025. And there's significance, symbolism in the Bible. So in Revelation, there's the sevenfold spirits. Sevenfold, translated in Hebrew, it's the angels over the congregations. Because or the nations, because at that point, how many nations were there? But there's 7 continents. So now there's a bunch more nations, but there's still 7 continents. So there's sevenfold spirits over them. So it's and in Ezekiel 28:10, the king of Tyre used to be a guarding. This is so hard for me to say. Guarding cherub in his garden, meaning he was one of those angels in the Garden of Eden with the fiery sword. Now he's the king of Tyre, doing bad stuff. And the prince of Tyre, his judgment was he was getting rich off of his special knowledge. Where's he getting the knowledge from? From that king that's an angel. So, right, we're just scratching the surface here, man. This is it's been happening the entire time. 1 Corinthians 11:10, women have to have power over their head due to the angels, meaning protection or covering over your head to protect you from the angels. So the key thing in all of this is free will. We all have it, even the angels. I personally think, and not to go, I have a problem with spider webbing, shooting things out, but I think that even with the stars and the zodiac, there's more than we know here, and free will is across the board. And I think that that's what's been the contaminants of this entire spiritual warfare is at the end of the day, they want the earth. They want dominion over the earth, and they're mad that we have it. So, right, hasn't stopped. So, of course, spiritual warfare is continuing. But yeah, I needed to focus on that in the Bible. I mean, in 5 stones too. So, King Agag, in Esther, you're familiar with the story of Esther and Haman. Haman is calling for the slaying of Jews. Well, he is mentioned as an Agagite. In the Orthodox Jewish version, there's a reference to Numbers 24:7 next to Agagite, which is in reference to being one of the first nations. So that's why King Agag specifically had to go, because he was clearly Nephilim and clearly doing really bad stuff. So when you boil that down, it's like, that's why they had to go. That's why. And something really crazy, just for fun, I heard something. I don't put a lot of, weight on this, but God made boars. But the Amalekites, being shapeshifters and experimenting with humans and stuff, they created the pig. And that's why God says, don't eat pork. Whether that's true or not, I do believe, I like to share that story because I feel like that is in line with what was happening. Well, I'm not going to go out here and say anything about the pork history, but
it does make sense. I mean, whenever anyway, I'm not smart enough to break that down. It makes sense to me. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to make a point, but it makes sense to me.
Oh, but that's just an insight of how this research was going for me. Because I'm like, okay, whoa, and I'm putting this stuff together, and then it was like, all right, like I said, questioning myself, like, what's my voice? Was just talk about it, just share it, put it in your blog, just share this crazy stuff. So So yeah, that's the Amalekites. With Goliath in 5 stones, there is absolute clear spiritual evidence or scriptural evidence that we were working with giants at that point. We were no longer scared of them. That was what the flood was about, was dinosaurs and all the crazy, crazy stuff that just had to go. So Solomon, to give you an example, Solomon transcripted his labor forces from the leftover, tribes from the conquest in the Promised Land. Well, we know all those tribes from the conquest in the Promised Land were giants, grasshoppers, and all that stuff. So Solomon had 70,000 stone carriers and 80,000 stone cutters. Now, as a writer, why would you put in stone carriers? That's not an efficient way to work, right? We have plenty of evidence of carts and wheels and all this stuff. So why would you have people carrying stones? It doesn't make any sense. Unless there's some big boys. So you start putting these pieces together, right? I mentioned Ezra. Ezra, the book of Ezra is about the exiled Israelites that were intermarrying with the Amorites, Jebusites, Girgashites, all the bad guys. Nehemiah lists the people in the temple, the people that had roles in the temple, lists them, calls them out. One singer, da 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 da. And so the story of Nehemiah it's a really awesome story about leadership, but there's super cool clues in there. So they find the Mosaic Law, and they're like, "Oh, whoa, we got to, we got to get right on we're gonna get on the right page. We got a book. We're gonna read to everybody." So as they're reading it, they get to the Moabite part, which is in Deuteronomy 23. The Ammonites and the Moabites are not allowed in the temple even after the 10th generation. What is that? Now, you know that any unblemished or anything wrong with you, you can't go into the temple. And it says it like your crushed testicle, blah. And everyone's familiar with the red heifer thing. Blemishes, that's the word I was trying to think of. So that recognizes that the Ammonites and Moabites are not clearly human, because after the 10th generation, they're still not able to come in, meaning it can't be birthed out, meaning that some can be birthed out, right? So if you intermarry with a Jebusite, maybe after 10 generations, that Jebusite's blood's gone. But Ammonite, Moabite's not. So as they're reading this law in Nehemiah, it says it. They were like, we found some Moabite. Y'all got to go. And they kicked the Moabites out literally as they were reading it. So that meant, and Moabites, which is a crazy story we'll get into, is the lion men. So it's, you know what I mean? And you got to put all these pieces together to know the whole story, because not knowing that, isn't that kind of like, well, why would you kick these guys out? You just got the law. Aren't we like redeeming ourselves? Why couldn't they have a second chance? Nephilim blood. And if you don't take that piece into there, and it's a lot of the stories, man, a lot of these stories aren't going to make, in my opinion, and I know that's a crazy bold thing to say as just a regular dude, but if you don't take in these crazy details, you don't get the full extent of the story. Nabal, the story of Nabal. While David is accruing his mighty men, his guys stop at Nabal and ask for help. And they say specifically, we haven't had any issues. Everything's been good. Can you help us out? And they ask for some sheep and blah. Nabal, the description of Nabal is he was a great man, bunch of sheep in the land. He was churlish and evil because he was a Calebite. So which is it? Is he great or is he evil? Which is it? Well, in Hebrew, that is Ishgadal, a man of great size. And he comes from the land of Carmel, which is one of the conquested areas from the Promised Land. So to read that story properly, this is a man of great size from one of the existing lands from the Promised Land. So then when his men come to him, or when David's men come to him, and the Calebite thing, that's the whole like dogmen stuff, right? So he's a churlish, evil, not all the way human, big guy from one of the lands in the promised land. So then when those guys say, hey, we haven't had any issues, right, without in any context, like that doesn't make sense, right? Like, why would you start the story like, hey, me and you've never had an issue, right? What they're saying is, remember, we were kicking you guys out and some of y'all stayed. We haven't had any issues. Can you help us out? That's a different story completely. And you know what I mean? We got to, and that's why, like, scratching the surface, dude, like these talk about Saul. Saul was a good, and I know I'm bouncing around, forgive me.
You're good, man.
Saul was a goodly man. He was shoulders to head taller than everybody else. Well, he was a goodly dude, right? Yeah. No, that is a term to describe stature, because Benaiah, one of David's mighty men, kills a goodly Egyptian. Some translations, they say an Egyptian giant, but one of David's sons, that he married 6 wives in Hebron. Hebron used to be Kiriath Arba, Arba the father of Anak giants. He married 6 women in Hebron, and one of his children was a goodly man.
Your mind blowing, yeah.
So yeah, dude, this is incredibly fun to me. I love it because I'm digging in, and I'm like, I have a thirst to know everything. That's just, I guess that's my default. You know, that's my bad things. But you start diving into these stories, man. Oaks of Mamre. I know we were talking about 5 stones, but this is funner.